At dinner, my husband quietly told me to transfer his entire $25 million fortune to my account just to be safe. He died 48 hours later. Then my son and his wife showed up with a lawyer and said, "Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. You ever notice how peace sometimes sounds like a setup? I learned that the hard way. My name is Deborah Anderson, and if you stay with me for the next few minutes, you will understand how a quiet dinner turned into the last conversation my husband ever had with me. It was a Friday evening, the kind that hums with a deceptively perfect calm, the kind where you almost feel guilty for being happy. The dining room of our estate glowed with that soft amber light Richard loved. It was his favorite room in the house, mostly because it faced the lake where we used to take Brendan fishing when he was small. Jazz played low, a saxophone drifting through our house like smoke. We were celebrating. My husband, Richard, had just secured an $8 million logistics contract, the final piece of the $25 million fortune we had built from absolutely nothing. He had always said this deal would be his last mountain to climb. And that night, clinking our crystal wine glasses, listening to the chime of the toast, it felt like we had finally reached the top. We laughed for dinner, teasing each other about everything from his terrible dance moves at our niece's wedding to my obsessive habit of double-checking the oven even when we hadn't used it for days. For once, there were no board calls, no balance sheets, no stress lines etched into his forehead. Just us. After dessert, a simple raspberry tart I had made from scratch, Richard leaned back, loosened his silk tie, and smiled that quiet smile that meant he was thinking about something serious. But his eyes didn't match the smile. They were darting around the room, checking the shadows, checking the windows. "Deborah," he said, his voice dropping an octave, cutting through the jazz music. "I need you to do something for me. Tonight. Right now." I blinked, my fork hovering halfway to my mouth. "Right now?" "Richard, we're celebrating. Can't it wait until morning?" "No," he said, and he reached across the mahogany table to cover my hand with his. His skin was ice cold. Clammy. "I need you to transfer everything to your account." I laughed nervously, assuming he was joking about a vacation fund or a new boat. "All of it?" "What, like the checking account?" "Everything," he repeated softly. The intensity in his voice made the hair on my arms stand up. The company operating accounts, the liquid assets, the investment portfolio, the house deeds. Every single cent. "I want it all under your name, Deborah. Just to be safe." The way he said it, calm, almost rehearsed, yet vibrating with an undercurrent of terror, made the air tilt a little. I pulled my hand back slowly. "Richard, you sound like one of those doomsday preppers. What is going on? Is there a lawsuit? Did something happen with the contract?" He looked at me, and for the first time in 30 years, I saw genuine fear in my husband's eyes. "It's not a lawsuit, honey. It's protection. Some things have been shifting at work. Dark things. That's all I can say right now. You are the only one I trust to keep it steady if anything happens." There was that word. If. He had been careful since his mild heart scare 5 years ago, but this felt different. This wasn't medical anxiety. This was survival instinct. "Richard," I whispered. "You're scaring me." "I'm trying to save us," he said. "Please. Log in. Do it now." So I did. Right there at the dinner table, I opened my laptop. My hands were shaking as I navigated the bank's portal. I initiated transfer after transfer. Millions of dollars moving through the digital ether with a few clicks. It felt surreal. It felt wrong. When the final confirmation screen popped up, "Transfer complete," Richard let out a long, shuddering breath. He poured himself another glass of wine, his hand trembling so much the bottle clinked against the glass. "Good," he said. "Now, promise me something else. Don't tell Brandon." "Why wouldn't I tell our son?" "Just promise me, Deb. Promise me." "I promise," I said. That was Friday night. We danced in the kitchen afterward, but the mood had shifted. He held me too tight, like he was trying to memorize the feel of my frame. Saturday passed in a blur of normalcy, but Richard stayed in his study. Then came Sunday night. My phone rang at 8:14 p.m. "Mrs. Anderson?" The voice was steady, professional. "This is County General Hospital. Your husband has been brought in. You should come quickly." My coffee mug hit the counter before I realized I had dropped it. The drive to the hospital is a blur of red lights, rain, and my own screaming prayers. Please, God, not now. We just made it to the top. Not now. When I arrived, the doctor met me with that look, the professional sympathy that cuts deeper than cruelty. Cardiac arrest. Massive. Sudden. They did everything they could. He was gone. My Richard. My partner of 30 years. The man who had just transferred his entire life into my hands. Gone. I was sitting in the hallway, staring at the sterile white tiles, trying to remember how to breathe, when I heard the elevator ding. I looked up, expecting comfort. Expecting family. My son, Brendan, stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a sharp navy suit that looked too crisp for an emergency. Beside him was his wife, Jessica, her face composed, her makeup flawless, clutching a designer bag like a shield. And behind them was a man I didn't recognize, holding a leather briefcase. For a second, I almost broke. Seeing my son felt like a lifeline in a sea of chaos. I stood automatically, my arms open, tears blurring my vision. "Oh, Brendan," I choked out. "He's gone. Dad is gone." But he didn't move toward me. He didn't open his arms. He didn't shed a tear. "Mom," he said evenly, his tone flat. "Rehearsed. We need to talk about Dad's accounts. Our lawyer is here to make sure everything is handled correctly." I froze, my arms still halfway outstretched. It took me a moment to realize what he had just said. I blinked at him, expecting him to correct himself, to say something human, something grieving. But his expression didn't change. It was a mask of cold calculation. Jessica's eyes flickered briefly toward the room where Richard's body lay, then back to me. Her gaze was ice. She nudged Brandon. "Brandon?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Your father hasn't been dead an hour." "What are you talking about?" He stepped closer, invading my space, looking down at me with a sneer I had never seen on his face before. "Stop acting, Mom. We know about the transfers. We tracked the IP address. We are here to freeze the assets. Dad's money isn't yours to steal." I felt the floor drop out from under me. My husband was dead in the next room, and my son was standing here accusing me of theft. If you are listening to this and you believe that a mother deserves respect, please like this video and comment one below. Tell me which city you are watching from. It helps me know I am not alone in this fight. Thank you. Now, let me tell you how I found out my son was a monster. To understand how a boy I nursed, raised, and loved could look me in the eye and accuse me of theft while his father's body was still warm, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the invisible ink that my life was written in. 30 years ago, I wasn't just Richard's wife. I was Deborah, a top-tier accounting student with a job offer from a Big Four firm in Chicago. I had a mind for numbers, for patterns, for spotting the penny that didn't fit the column. I dreamed of corner offices and skylines. But then I met Richard. He had a dream, a logistics company, and a lot of passion, but he was drowning in paperwork. He was a visionary, but he couldn't balance a checkbook to save his life. I made a choice. It's the choice millions of women make, isn't it? I chose us. I turned down the firm. I set up Richard's books on our kitchen table in a drafty apartment that smelled of old coffee and ambition. I managed the payroll, negotiated with vendors, and saved us from bankruptcy twice in those first 5 years. I built the financial skeleton that allowed his dream to walk. But as the company grew, I stepped back. It wasn't forced, it was gradual. Richard became the face, the CEO, the genius in the magazine interviews. I became the support system. I raised Brandon. I managed the household. I hosted the dinner parties that charmed investors. I faded into the background, content to be the soil that let the trees grow. And Brandon? We gave him everything we didn't have. Private schools, tennis camps, a trust fund that unlocked when he turned 25. We wanted him to have the world, but I think we made a fatal mistake. We forgot to teach him the value of the dollar. We shielded him from the struggle. I remember a specific day when Brandon was 16. It was a Tuesday. I found a receipt in his jeans pocket while doing laundry. It was for a pawn shop. He had pawned a vintage watch Richard had given him for his birthday, a watch worth $5,000, for $500. When I confronted him, he didn't look ashamed. He looked annoyed. I needed cash for a concert, Mom, he said, chewing gum. Dad can just buy another one. What's the big deal? The big deal, I said, my voice trembling, is that your father worked hard for that. And you sold it like it was trash. It is trash, he sneered. It's just things. You guys have so much money, why are you so stingy? I told Richard that night. I wanted to punish him, to make him work in the warehouse for the summer to earn it back. But Richard just sighed. He was tired. He wrote a check to get the watch back. He's just a kid, Deb, Richard said. He'll grow out of it. But he didn't grow out of it. He grew into it. He went off to college, tuition paid, allowance generous, and barely called. When he did, it was always about money. I need more for books. Rent went up. I need a new laptop. I always sent it. I thought that was what love looked like. Provision. I thought if I gave him enough, eventually he would be grateful. When he dropped out of his MBA program because it was too theoretical, which really meant he was failing, Richard was furious. But the guilt of being an absent father weighed on Richard. So, he hired Brandon at the company anyway. VP of Business Development, a title that meant nothing but paid a 6-figure salary. I watched from the sidelines as Brandon walked around the office like he owned the place. He bought expensive Italian suits, leased a Porsche 911, and started talking about legacy. But he never talked about hard work. He looked at the company Richard built, the company we built, and he didn't see the sweat. He saw a piggy bank. And I was just the gatekeeper he had to bypass. The old woman who checked the credit card statements and asked annoying questions. Why is there a $5,000 charge at a nightclub in Miami on the corporate card, Brandon? I asked him once during a Sunday lunch, holding the statement I had intercepted. He slammed his fork down, startling the maid. It was client entertainment, Mom. God, stop micromanaging me. You're not the CFO. You're barely even an employee. I am your mother, I said, my voice trembling. And I own half of everything. On paper, he sneered. But let's be real. Dad makes the money. You just spend it on gardening and charity galas. So stick to baking cookies and let the men handle the business. Richard sighed, rubbing his temples, looking gray. Deborah, let the boy breathe. He's learning. He's learning, Richard said. But I knew what he was really learning. He was learning that I was an obstacle. And obstacles are meant to be removed. I didn't know then how far he would go to remove me. I didn't know that my own son looked at me and saw nothing but a signature standing between him and millions. I didn't realize that while I was baking his favorite pies, he was calculating my expiration date. If Brandon was the gunpowder, Jessica was the match. And she struck it the moment she walked through our front door. He met her 3 years ago at a high-end charity gala in the city. Jessica was stunning, I'll give her that. She had sharp features, calculating eyes that were a little too blue, and a way of listening to men that made them feel like they were the only person in the universe. She worked in PR, though I never quite saw any clients, and her background was murky. From the moment she stepped into our house for the first time, I felt the temperature drop. She didn't look at the family photos on the mantel. She didn't look at the warmth of the home. She looked around our foyer, her eyes assessing the crystal chandelier, the Persian rugs, the original oil paintings on the walls. She wasn't looking at a home. She was looking at an inventory. She was calculating liquidation value. "It's so quaint," she said to me, offering a hand that felt like cold marble. Her nails were perfectly manicured, sharp red talons. "Brandon tells me you've lived here for 30 years? I couldn't imagine staying in one place that long. Stagnation kills the spirit, don't you think?" "Stability builds roots," I replied, smiling politely, trying to be the welcoming mother. "And memories." She smirked, a tiny lifting of one corner of her mouth. "Roots rot if you don't prune them, Deborah." Within 6 months, they were married. A lavish wedding at the plaza, of course, paid for by us. It cost more than our first house. And that's when the dynamic truly shifted. Jessica didn't just want Brandon's money, she wanted control. She wanted to be the queen, and she knew the biggest threat to her throne wasn't Richard, it was me. She started the whisper campaign. It was subtle at first, like a slow-acting poison. At Sunday dinners, she would make little comments designed to make me feel obsolete, stupid, or old. "Oh, Deborah, you're still using that old accountant for your taxes?" she'd say, pouring wine for Richard, leaning in a little too close to him. "Brandon and I use a wealth management team downtown. Much more aggressive. You have to be aggressive to protect assets these days. But I suppose, at your age, you prefer safety. Passive income." She would turn to Richard, ignoring me completely. "Dad, Brandon has so many fresh ideas for the logistics expansion. You really should listen to him more. The old ways are charming, but the market is eating dinosaurs for breakfast." Richard would laugh, charmed by her spunk and her beauty. "She's got fire, that one," he'd tell me later in bed. "She's disrespectful," I'd counter, brushing my hair with angry strokes. "She's just young and ambitious, Deb. Don't be the bitter mother-in-law. Try to bond with her." So I tried. I bit my tongue until it bled. I invited her to lunch. I took her shopping. But every interaction was a battleground. I watched as she isolated Brandon. Suddenly, he was too busy to come over for coffee. He stopped answering my texts. When I did see him, he parroted her words. He started using words like leverage, liquidity, and restructuring. "Jessica thinks we should modernize the trust fund," he told me once, pacing around the living room. "She thinks it's archaic that you have veto power over my withdrawals." "I have veto power because I don't want you bankrupting yourself on sports cars and vacations," I said calmly. "Jessica says you do it to control me," he snapped, his face turning red. "She says you're jealous that I have a partner who actually understands business, unlike you." That stung. But the worst was the Christmas dinner last year. The memory is seared into my brain. I had spent 2 days cooking a prime rib roast, Brendan's favorite. I had set the table with the good china. We were all seated, the candles flickering. Jessica pushed the meat around her plate with a look of distaste. A bit overcooked, isn't it? She murmured, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then she looked up, smiling that shark smile. You know, Brendan was telling me how you used to handle the company books in the 80s. It's so cute that you helped out. Like a hobby. It wasn't a hobby, I said, my grip tightening on my wine glass until my knuckles were white. It was survival. I kept the IRS from shutting us down. Of course, she said dismissively, waving a hand. But now that the company is worth millions, isn't it better to leave things to professionals? I mean, no offense, Deborah, but you're a homemaker. You don't understand complex asset structures. You really shouldn't be involved in Richard's estate planning at all. It's risky. I looked at Brendan, waiting for him to defend me. Is that what you think? He didn't meet my eyes. He looked at his wife, like a dog waiting for a command. She has a point, Mom. You're getting older. You forget things. You lost your keys last week. Jessica thinks we should set up a power of attorney for Dad. Just in case. In case of what? I asked, my voice rising, vibrating with hurt. In case you can't handle it, Jessica answered for him, her voice dripping with fake concern. In case the dementia sets in. I felt invisible in my own dining room. They were discussing my competence, my future, my husband's legacy, as if I were a piece of furniture that needed to be moved to the attic. I realized then that Jessica wasn't just mean. She was dangerous. She was planting seeds of doubt in Richard's mind, in Brendan's mind, painting me as the senile, incompetent old woman. I overheard her on the phone in the hallway later that night. She thought I was in the kitchen. Yeah, the old hag is still holding on, she whispered. But don't worry. We're working on the pressure points. Brendan is completely under my thumb. We'll have the liquidity soon. I didn't know who she was talking to. I didn't know what liquidity she meant. But looking back, I realized she was clearing the board. And I didn't know it yet, but she was preparing for checkmate. The week before Richard died, the house felt different. You know how the air gets heavy and yellow right before a tornado touches down? It was like that. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was pregnant with something dark. Richard, usually the most open man I knew, started locking doors. I would come downstairs at 2 a.m. to get water, and I'd see the light spilling from under his study door. I'd hear him pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. One night, I knocked gently. Richard? Are you okay? You've been in there for hours. The pacing stopped abruptly. I'm fine, Deb. Just go to bed. Open the door. Let me make you tea. Chamomile. I said I'm fine, he snapped. He never snapped at me. Never. In 30 years, he had never raised his voice at me in anger, only in passion. This was new. This was terrified anger. The next morning, he apologized, blaming stress over the new contract. He hugged me, but he felt stiff. I noticed things. A wife notices. I noticed he was taking his blood pressure medication more frequently, popping pills twice a day instead of once. I noticed he kept his phone face down on the table, jumping whenever it buzzed. And then, I heard the call. It was Wednesday, 3 days before the dinner. I was gardening near the open window of his study. I was pruning the hydrangeas, hidden by the large bushes. He thought I was out running errands. His voice boomed through the screen, vibrating with a rage I hadn't heard in decades. You think I'm blind? Richard shouted. I see exactly what you're doing. You're not ready, and I will not let you burn this company to the ground. Silence. He was listening to the person on the other end. Don't you dare threaten me, Richard growled, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. I raised you better than this. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe I raised a shark and now it smells blood. I raised you. He was talking to Brandon. My heart hammered against my ribs. I hid behind the hydrangeas, terrified to move, terrified to breathe. What had Brandon done? No, Richard said firmly. The audit happens Monday. And if I find what I think I'm going to find, you're out. Do you hear me? You are done. I will cut you off. I will prosecute you if I have to. He slammed the phone down. I heard the sound of glass shattering, maybe a paperweight, maybe a tumbler thrown against the wall. I crept away, my hands shaking so hard I dropped my trowel. I wanted to run in there and ask him what was wrong. But fear paralyzed me. Fear of what? Fear that my family was shattering. Fear that the truth would break us. That night, Richard didn't come to bed until 3 a.m. When he slid in beside me, he smelled of scotch and cold sweat. I pretended to be asleep, but I reached out and touched his back. He flinched, then relaxed. I love you, Deb, he whispered into the dark. It sounded like a goodbye. It sounded like a man making peace with his maker. I love you too, I whispered back. What's wrong, Richard? Please, let me help. He didn't answer for a long time. Then, he turned to me, his eyes wet in the moonlight. I saw too much, Deb. And I said too little. I trusted the wrong people. I need to fix it. But I need you to be strong. Stronger than you've ever been. I am strong, I said. He kissed my forehead. I know. You're the strongest of us all. The next day, Thursday, he told me he had a doctor's appointment. But I checked our shared calendar, there was nothing there. I checked the GPS tracker on the car, we installed it for insurance discounts, something Brandon hated, and saw he hadn't gone to the doctor. He had gone to the law offices of Henderson and Associates. His personal estate lawyer. He was there for 3 hours. He came home looking pale, clutching his briefcase like it contained a bomb. He went straight to his study and locked the door again. I heard the shredder running. I heard the printer. Later that evening, Jessica came over. She said she wanted to bring Richard some soothing herbal tea she had picked up from a holistic healer. She said he looked stressed. Here, Dad, she said, handing him a steaming mug. Drink this. It helps with the palpitations. Richard hesitated. He looked at the cup, then at Jessica. What's in it? Just valerian root and chamomile, she smiled. Trust me. He drank it. An hour later, he was dizzy. He stumbled on the stairs. I helped him to bed, and he was mumbling about numbers not adding up. I thought it was just exhaustion. When he finally came out for dinner on Friday, the night he asked me to transfer the money, he seemed lighter. Almost relieved. But physically, he looked drained. Like a man who had been poisoned slowly. Just to be safe, he had said at dinner. I looked at his face in the candlelight, seeing the lines of worry etched around his eyes. He wasn't paranoid. He was terrified. He knew something was coming for him. He was trying to build a wall around me before the wave hit. But even Richard, with all his brilliance, didn't calculate how fast the wave would move. Or that the wave would have his own son's face. He tried to outrun the shark, but he didn't realize the shark was already in the boat. Grief is the only silence people notice. But at Richard's funeral, the noise was deafening. It was a cacophony of whispers, fake sympathy, and the rustle of expensive suits. The estate lawn was trimmed to perfection. The flower arrangements were immaculate, orchids, white roses, lilies. Everything Richard would have hated. He liked wildflowers. He liked simple things. He wanted a small service. But this? This was a production. This was a networking event disguised as a memorial. Brendan handled every arrangement without looking at me once. He stood near the entrance of the church, his posture rigid, his suit flawless, shaking hands with partners, investors, and local politicians. He looked like a CEO in waiting, not a grieving son. Jessica stood beside him, clutching a lace handkerchief she never used to wipe a single tear, her head bowed in a performance of sorrow so precise it deserved an Oscar. People whispered about how strong they were. "Look at Brendan," they'd say, nodding approvingly. "Stepping up for his mother. Such a good son. Taking the reins." They didn't see the distance. They didn't see the invisible wall of ice between us. They didn't know that 3 days ago, he had accused me of theft over his father's cooling body. They didn't know he had threatened to call the police on me at the hospital. I sat in the front row, alone. There was an empty space next to me where my son should have been. Instead, he sat across the aisle with Jessica. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. 2 sides. 2 camps. When the pastor finished, I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. My tears had turned into a cold, hard knot in my chest. I stared at the mahogany coffin and thought about the $25 million sitting in my account. I thought about Brendan's threat. "Dad's money isn't yours to steal." I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was one of Richard's oldest friends, a board member named George. He looked genuinely devastated. "Deborah," he murmured, leaning down. "I'm so sorry. Richard was a good man. Listen, we need to talk. He called me last week about an audit. He was worried about..." Before I could answer, before George could finish his sentence, Jessica swooped in like a vulture. "Thank you, George," she said, her voice soft and breathy, placing herself physically between us. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my flesh. "We're taking good care of her. She's very fragile right now. The confusion, you know." She tapped her temple subtly. "The confusion." George looked at me with pity. "Of course. Take care, Deborah. We can talk later." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Jessica by her designer silk collar and tell George that I wasn't confused, I was cornered. But I didn't. I knew a scene would only prove her point. I saw the triumphant glint in her eyes. She was establishing the narrative, the grieving, senile widow. "Why are you doing this?" I hissed at her when George walked away. "Let go of my arm." Jessica smiled, linking her arm through Brendan's who had just walked up. "Doing what, Deborah?" "We're just managing the optics. Investors get nervous when a widow is unstable. We need to show strength." "Strength?" I looked at Brendan. "Your father hasn't been buried yet, and you're worried about investors? You're blocking me from his friends?" I grabbed my coat. "Mr. Henderson, drive the car. We're going to rob my own company." We waited until 10 p.m. The corporate headquarters of Anderson Logistics stood like a glass monolith against the rainy sky. It was a building I had helped design, yet now I had to sneak into it like a criminal. Mr. Henderson parked his nondescript sedan in the loading bay alley. I texted Raphael. I had his number saved from years of sending him Christmas bonuses, something Brendan had tried to cut twice. "Raphael, it's Mrs. Anderson. I need help. It's about Richard. And it's about justice." 2 minutes later, the heavy steel service door creaked open. Raphael stood there in his blue uniform, holding a mop bucket, his eyes wide. He looked older than I remembered, but his eyes were kind. "Mrs. Anderson," he whispered. I heard about the ban. Mr. Brendan sent a memo. Said security should escort you out if you showed up. Said you were unstable." "Raphael," I said, stepping into the hallway that smelled of floor wax and memories. Brandon is trying to steal the company. Richard left me a mission. I need to get into the server room, and I need to get to Richard's office. Can you get us past the cameras? Raphael didn't hesitate. He spat on the ground. That boy has no honor. He treats us like dirt. Come on. I know the blind spots. He led us through the service corridors, bypassing the security cameras in the lobby. We took the freight elevator. My heart pounded in my chest. I felt like a spy in a movie, but the stakes were my life. Every creak of the building sounded like footsteps. We reached Richard's office first. It was taped off. Do not enter. I can't open this, Raphael whispered. Digital lock. I have the code, I said. I typed in the birthday of our first dog, a golden retriever named Buster. Richard was sentimental. Click. We slipped inside. The room was cold. It smelled of Richard, stale coffee, and hard work. I went straight to the desk. I felt under the drawer. There it was. A small, burner flip phone taped to the wood. I ripped it off and shoved it in my pocket. Proof. Now the server room, I said. We moved fast. Raphael unlocked the server room with his master key. I'll stand guard, he said. Security does rounds in 20 minutes. 20 minutes, I muttered. Okay. I sat down at the terminal. It had been years since I touched a corporate system, but the logic of accounting never changes. I typed in my old username. D. Anderson. Password. Richard said he reactivated it. I tried our anniversary. Error. I tried his birthday. Error. Think, Deborah. What would Richard use? What was the one thing he always said I was? I closed my eyes. You were always the smart one. I typed, Smart One 1985, the year we started. Access granted. Green text scrolled across the screen. I was in. I navigated to the financial archives. I filtered for consulting fees. The list populated, and my breath hitched. JNB Global Consulting. Apex Strategic Solutions. Trinity Advisors. Dozens of transactions. $50,000 here. $20,000 there. Monthly. Steady. Bleeding the company dry. Millions gone. I clicked on JNB Global Consulting. I pulled up the vendor registration form. The address was a P.O. box in Delaware. But the emergency contact? Jessica Miller. Her maiden name. Got you, I whispered. I plugged in a USB drive Henderson handed me and started downloading everything. Suddenly, Raphael hissed from the doorway. Someone's coming. Executive elevator. Hide. At this hour? Henderson asked. Henderson pulled me behind a rack of humming servers. We crouched in the dark, the blue LED lights blinking around us. The door beeped open. Footsteps. Fast, angry footsteps. I told you to wipe the hard drives tonight. It was Brandon. His voice echoed off the metal walls. I'm trying. Jessica's voice followed. But I need the admin code. Dad changed it before he died. Well, hack it. If Mom gets a lawyer, the first thing they'll subpoena is the server. Relax, Brandon. She's broke. She's probably crying into her pillow right now. She doesn't even know how to turn on a computer. I squeezed my fist so hard my knuckles turned white. She doesn't even know how to turn on a computer. I'm just worried, Brendan said, his voice dropping. Did you dispose of the leftover supplies? My blood ran cold. Leftover supplies. The poison. Yes, Jessica snapped. I flushed the powder. But the vial. I think I left the vial in Dad's desk at the house. In the false bottom drawer. You what? Brandon screamed. You idiot! You said you cleared the office. I panicked. When he collapsed, I just ran. Look, it's fine. Nobody knows about the false bottom except Dad. And he's dead. We have to go get it, Brandon said. Now. Before the cleaners find it. Or worse, before Mom accidentally finds it. The cleaners are gone. Let's just wipe the server first. No. We go to the house. Now. Mom is asleep. We sneak in, grab the vial, and leave. Then we're safe. They turned and ran out of the room. I stayed frozen in the darkness, looking at Henderson. His face was pale. They're going to the house, I whispered. To get the vial. The vial I have in my pocket? Henderson asked, patting his coat. No, I realized. Richard gave you a sample. But the source, the bottle Jessica used, is still in the desk. We have to beat them there, Henderson said. No, I said, a plan forming in my mind. A cold, ruthless plan. Let them go. Let them break in. I have security cameras inside the study that upload to the cloud. If they break in to find a murder weapon, we catch them on tape, Henderson finished. We don't just catch them, I said, standing up. We destroy them. I looked at the download bar on the screen. 100% complete. I pulled the USB drive. Raphael, I said to the shadows. Thank you. You just saved this company. Give 'em hell, Mrs. A., Raphael said, grinning in the dark. We slipped out into the rain. The game had changed. I wasn't the prey anymore. I was the hunter. And I had the bait. Mr. Henderson and I drove to his office in a silence that felt heavier than the storm raging outside. The rain hammered against the windshield of his sedan, matching the chaotic rhythm of my heart. We didn't go back to my house. It wasn't safe. Not yet. Brendan had made it clear that I was an intruder in my own life, and tonight, he was desperate. We sat in Henderson's conference room, a dimly lit space smelling of lemon polish, old law books, and cold coffee. It felt like a bunker. Henderson opened his laptop and logged into the cloud security server for my home. My hands were shaking as I accepted the mug of water he offered. Are you sure about this, Deborah? He asked, his finger hovering over the connect button. His face was illuminated by the harsh blue light of the screen. Watching your own son break into your home, it is a bell you cannot unring. Once you see it, the image of him as your little boy is gone forever. I lost my little boy a long time ago, I said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. I just didn't realize it until he tried to bury me. Turn it on. The screen flickered to life. The feed was grainy, black and white night vision, but it was clear enough to break my heart all over again. It showed Richard's study. The leather chair where he used to read Sunday papers. The mahogany desk where he built an empire. The stillness of a room that was mourning its owner. It was 11:15 p.m. The timestamp ticked away the seconds of my life. They should be there any minute, Henderson murmured, checking his watch against the time on the screen. If they left the office when we did. At 11:22 p.m., the window latch jimmied open. I flinched physically, as if I had been struck. I had locked that window myself. I remembered cleaning the glass just last week. A figure climbed through. It was Brandon. He was wearing a dark hoodie, looking like a common burglar in the house he grew up in. He moved with a stealth that terrified me. Where had he learned that? He turned and helped Jessica through. She brushed off her knees, looking around the room with visible disgust, even through the grainy footage. God, it smells like old man in here, Jessica whispered. The audio was crisp. Richard had installed high-end microphones years ago after a break-in scare down the street. Her voice was like acid. Just find the desk, Brandon hissed, pulling his head down. His face was pale, sweaty. And keep your voice down. Mom sleeps like the dead, but we don't want to wake the maid. If Raphael called her, she might be awake. Mom sleeps like the dead. The irony made bile rise in my throat. I wanted to scream at the screen. I wanted to tell him I was wide awake and watching him dig his own grave. I watched, my fingernails digging into the mahogany of Henderson's conference table as my son rifled through his father's desk. He didn't just search, he desecrated. He pulled out drawers and dumped them. He tossed Richard's favorite fountain pen onto the floor. He treated Richard's sanctuary with such disrespect it made my teeth ache. It's not here, Brandon panicked, his voice rising in pitch. The top drawers are empty. Just bills and junk. The false bottom, you idiot, Jessica snapped, pacing the room. She picked up a framed photo of Richard and me from our 25th anniversary, looked at it, and placed it face down on the shelf. Under the main drawer. Use your knife. Brandon felt around. He pulled out a knife, a Swiss Army knife I had given him for Boy Scouts 20 years ago. I remembered wrapping it. I remembered telling him to be careful not to cut himself. Now he was using it to cut the last cord between us. He pried up the wood panel with a sickening crack. He reached in. Got it, he breathed. He pulled out a small, amber glass vial. Is that it? Jessica asked, stepping closer. Yeah. Nature's Rest. The label you printed. Brandon held it up to the moonlight streaming in. There's still a dose left. If the cops found this, if they tested the residue. They won't, Jessica said, snatching it from him. We'll dump it in the lake on the way back. Then we are in the clear. No weapon, no crime. Just a sad widow and a heart attack. What about the letter? Brandon asked, digging deeper into the hidden compartment. You said Dad wrote a letter. You said he was paranoid. I don't see a letter, Brandon said, frantically feeling the empty space. Just the vial and some old coins. Maybe he didn't write one. Maybe he was too out of it. He was writing something, Jessica said, narrowing her eyes. I saw him. Maybe he mailed it? Or maybe the tea worked faster than I thought. She laughed then. A low, cruel sound that chilled me to the bone. I guess I made it too strong. I still feel sick about it, Jess, Brandon muttered, sitting in Richard's chair. My husband's chair. He put his head in his hands. He was my dad. He taught me how to throw a baseball. Jessica grabbed his face, her nails digging into his cheeks, forcing him to look at her. He was a barrier, Brandon. He was going to cut you off. He was going to put you in jail for the embezzlement. We did what we had to do. It was self-defense. We were defending our future. Now, let's go before the old hag wakes up and wanders in here looking for her teeth. They climbed back out the window, disappearing into the night. The screen went static. I sat in the silence of Henderson's office, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness. Tears of absolute, clarifying fury. The kind of anger that burns forests down. Self-defense, I whispered. They called killing my husband self-defense. Henderson closed the laptop gently. We have them, Deborah. Breaking and entering. Tampering with evidence. And a confession to the poisoning on tape. It's not enough, I said, wiping my face with the sleeve of my coat. They'll claim the audio is manipulated. They'll claim they were just retrieving personal property. Good lawyers can spin a break-in as a son looking for a memento. I need more. I need to nail the coffin shut so tight they can never claw their way out. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the burner phone I had retrieved from Richard's office. Then let's see who else they were talking to, I said. Let's see who helped them mix the tea. I flipped the burner phone open. It was an old model, the kind Richard liked because he thought they were harder to hack. It was password protected. Do you know the code? Henderson asked, leaning over my shoulder. I looked at the keypad. Richard was a creature of habit. But he was also sentimental. I typed 0704. Independence Day. The day he started the company. The day we found out we were free from debt 30 years ago. The phone unlocked. I went straight to the messages. There was only one thread. A number saved as the cleaner. I read the last text sent from Richard to this number, dated 2 days before he died. I know what you are doing. Meet me. Or I go to the police. The reply from the cleaner was chilling in its brevity. You don't want to do that, Mr. Anderson. Family matters should stay private. Or things get messy. Who is the cleaner? Henderson asked. I scrolled up. There was a photo sent months ago. An attachment of a wire transfer receipt. It was sent from the cleaner to Richard as proof of something. Maybe Richard had paid them off before? No, it was a forwarded receipt. It was a receipt showing a transfer of $40,000. The name on the receipt wasn't the cleaner. It was Brenda Miller. Miller, I said, my mind racing, connecting dots that shouldn't be connected. That's Jessica's maiden name. Is it her sister? Jessica is an only child, Henderson said. I ran her background check when Richard first hired me to look into her. Then who is Brenda Miller? I googled the name on Henderson's laptop. Brenda Miller, registered nurse, County General Hospital. My blood ran cold. The room seemed to spin. Brenda, I whispered. The nurse. The nurse who was on duty the night Richard died. The one I spoke to at the hospital. The one who told me he died peacefully. She held my hand, Henderson. She looked me in the eye and said she tried everything. She's Jessica's cousin, Henderson realized, typing furiously on his own computer. Maternal side. Low profile. Different last name until she divorced. We missed it. She was the inside man, I said. They didn't just poison him at home. They made sure he didn't survive the hospital. They had a fail-safe. I stood up. Mr. Henderson, get the car. We are going to pay Nurse Brenda a visit. It was 2 a.m. when we pulled up to the rundown apartment complex on the south side of the city. It was a far cry from the gated community where Brandon and Jessica lived. The streetlights were broken, and the pavement was cracked. This was a place where people lived paycheck to paycheck, where desperation made people do terrible things. This is dangerous, Deborah, Henderson warned as he killed the engine. She could be desperate. If she was willing to kill Richard, she might have a weapon. I'm desperate too, I said, opening the car door. And I have something she doesn't. I have the truth. And I have nothing left to lose. We walked up to apartment 4B. I could hear a baby crying inside. I pounded on the door. Go away, a female voice shouted from inside. I'll call the cops. Call them. I shouted back, my voice echoing in the concrete hallway. I'm sure they'd love to hear about the $40,000 wired to your husband's account from a shell company in Delaware. I'm sure they'd love to see the texts on Richard's phone. Silence. Then, the sound of a chain sliding off. The door opened. Brenda stood there, looking haggard. She was wearing a stained t-shirt, her hair a mess, her eyes red-rimmed. She looked terrified. "Mrs. Anderson," she stammered. "May we come in?" I didn't wait for an answer. I pushed past her. The apartment smelled of stale cigarettes and baby formula. A toddler was sleeping on the couch, wrapped in a worn blanket. "Please," Brenda whispered, closing the door quickly. "Don't wake him. He has a fever." I turned to her, feeling a war between rage and pity. "You helped them kill my husband." "No!" Brenda shook her head violently. "I didn't kill anyone. I just looked the other way." Looked the other way? I pulled out the printout of the bank transfer Henderson had prepared in the car. "Is that what this 40 grand bought? A blind eye while my husband gasped for air? Did you turn off the monitors? Did you delay the code blue?" Brenda collapsed onto a kitchen chair, putting her head in her hands. "I needed the money. My husband, he got laid off. We were going to lose the apartment." Jessica said, she said it was just a sedative. She said Richard was having a breakdown and they needed to calm him down to get him into rehab. She swore it wasn't lethal. "She lied," I said coldly. "It was poison. And when he got to the hospital, you made sure the toxicology panel wasn't run, didn't you? You intercepted the order." Brenda sobbed. "She told me to mark it as a standard cardiac event. She said if I didn't, she'd tell the hospital board I was stealing meds. She blackmailed me. She said she'd ruin my life." "So you let a good man die to save your job?" "I didn't know he was dying until the monitor flatlined. I tried to revive him. I swear. I did CPR. But it was too late." "But you didn't report the poison," Henderson said, stepping forward. "That makes you an accessory to murder, Brenda. That's 20 years to life. Who raises your son then? Foster care?" Brenda looked at the sleeping toddler, then back at us, her face pale as a sheet. "What do you want?" "I want a witness," I said. "They'll kill me," she whispered. "Brandon, he knows people. He talks about the syndicate. Brandon is a coward with a checkbook," I said. "He doesn't know anyone. He's playing gangster because he's in debt. But if you testify, if you tell the court exactly what Jessica asked you to do, Mr. Henderson can cut a deal with the district attorney. Immunity for your testimony." "Immunity?" Brenda looked at Henderson. "I can't promise total immunity," Henderson said, his lawyer voice steady. "But I can promise leniency. Probation. You stay out of prison. You keep your son. But only if you give us everything. The texts, the emails, the payments." Brenda hesitated. She looked around her shabby apartment, then at her child. "Jessica called me 10 minutes ago," Brenda said softly. "She told me to delete everything. She said the old lady is sniffing around. She told me to burn the phone." "Don't delete it," I said. "Give it to us." Brenda stood up. She walked to a cracked ceramic cookie jar and pulled out a cell phone. "This is my burner," she said. She texted me the instructions on this. How to alter the chart. What time to administer the calming agent if he woke up. She handed me the phone. I held it like it was radioactive. This was it. The smoking gun. "You did the right thing, Brenda," I said, though I felt no sympathy for her. She had sold my husband for the price of a used car. We left the apartment. The rain had stopped. "We have the break-in video," Henderson listed. "We have the embezzlement records. We have the burner phone text messages. And we have the nurse." "Is it enough?" I asked. It's enough to bury them, Henderson said. But we have to play this carefully. If we go to the police now, Brendan's high-priced lawyers might find a loophole. We need to catch them in a lie under oath. The next 48 hours were a game of agonizing waiting. I stayed at a hotel downtown under an assumed name. I couldn't go home. Brendan had changed the locks, claiming emergency conservatorship powers while the injunction was pending. I drove past my own house once. I saw Brendan's car in the driveway. I saw lights on in every room. Neighbors told me he was throwing parties. Loud music. Champagne. He was celebrating his victory before the war was even won. It made my blood boil, but I forced myself to drive on. Enjoy it, son, I thought. It's your last party. Monday morning, the lab results from the tea sample Richard had given Henderson finally came back. We met at a diner off the highway, a place where truckers stopped for coffee. It was anonymous. Henderson slid a manila folder across the table. It's confirmed, he said. Digitalis. Foxglove. Foxglove? I asked, frowning. That's a flower. I have those in the garden. Exactly, Henderson said. It's a flower that stops the heart if you brew the leaves and seeds correctly. It mimics a massive heart attack. It's old school. Hard to detect unless you're specifically looking for it. And combined with Richard's beta blockers, it was a death sentence. It slowed his heart until it just stopped. I read the report. Lethal toxicity. Where did they get it? I asked. Did they steal it from my garden? No. Jessica's credit card records, which I pulled thanks to your admin access, show a purchase from a botanical supply store in Oregon 3 months ago. Ornamental garden kit. Foxglove seeds. And a book on herbal remedies. She grew it, I realized, feeling sick. She grew the poison in her own greenhouse. That's why she was so proud of her gardening hobby. It wasn't a hobby. It was a weapon factory. Premeditated, Henderson said. Months in the planning. This wasn't an accident or a moment of passion. This was cold-blooded murder. Okay, I said, closing the folder. My hands were steady now. So we have everything. When is the hearing? Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. The judge is presiding over the emergency motion to make the asset freeze permanent and to appoint Brendan as your guardian. They are going to try to paint me as insane, I said. They have affidavits. Yes. And you're going to let them. Excuse me? I looked at him. I am not going to let them call me crazy. Deborah, listen to me, Henderson leaned in. For this to work, for the twist to hit the judge hard enough to warrant immediate criminal intervention, you need to play the part. Walk in there looking defeated. Let Brendan think he's won. Let his guard down. If he thinks you're fighting back with fire, he'll be defensive. He'll have his script ready. But if he thinks you're broken, he'll get arrogant. And arrogance is where he'll slip up. I thought about it. I thought about the 30 years I spent being the quiet wife. The invisible support system. I knew how to play that role. I had played it my whole life. I knew how to be the woman everyone underestimated. I can do that, I said. I'll wear black. No makeup. I'll look like the grieving, confused widow they want me to be. Good. Because tomorrow isn't just a hearing, Deborah. It's an ambush. We aren't going there to defend you. We are going there to prosecute them. I went back to my hotel room and prepared. I practiced my tremors in the mirror. I practiced the vacant stare. It wasn't hard. The grief was real, I just had to amplify the helplessness. I had to channel every ounce of pain I felt into a performance that would disarm my enemies. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked old. Tired. You raised a shark, Richard, I whispered to my reflection. But you married a lioness. And tomorrow, the lioness hunts. The courtroom was cold. Why are courtrooms always so freezing? It smelled of floor wax, old wood, and judgment. The fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. I sat at the defendant's table, small and huddled in an oversized black coat I had bought at a thrift store. I didn't wear jewelry. I wore my hair in a loose, slightly messy bun, letting the gray show. I wanted to look like I had unraveled. I wanted them to see a broken woman. On the other side, Brendan looked like $1 million, literally. He was wearing a custom Italian suit, his hair gelled, looking every inch the grieving but capable heir. He was checking his watch, looking bored. Jessica sat behind him, wearing a modest navy dress, looking demure. A perfect performance of the supportive daughter-in-law. The judge, Honorable Judge Miller, no relation to Jessica, thank God, was a stern woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked tired. She looked like she had seen enough family squabbles to last a lifetime. This is an emergency hearing regarding the petition for conservatorship over Mrs. Deborah Anderson, the judge announced, shuffling papers. Mr. Peterson, you may proceed. Brendan's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, was a shark in a pinstripe suit. He stood up, buttoning his jacket, oozing confidence. Your Honor, Peterson began, his voice smooth as silk. This is a tragedy. Mr. Brendan Anderson is not here because he wants to control his mother. He is here because he loves her. Since the sudden death of his father, Mrs. Anderson has exhibited alarming behavior. Paranoia. Erratic spending. Hallucinations. He turned to point at me. And, most concerning, the coercion of her late husband to transfer the entire estate into her personal accounts hours before his death. We believe Mrs. Anderson is suffering from a mental break. She is unable to manage an estate of this magnitude. We are asking the court to grant Mr. Brendan Anderson legal guardianship to protect the family legacy. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Anderson, do you have representation? Henderson stood up slowly. I am representing the defendant, Your Honor. Does the defense wish to make a statement? Not at this time, Your Honor. We would like to proceed to the testimony. Peterson smirked. He thought we were rolling over. He called Brendan to the stand. Brendan walked up, placing his hand on the Bible. My son. The boy I taught to tie his shoes. Swearing to tell the truth. Mr. Anderson, Peterson asked. Tell the court about your mother's behavior recently. Brendan sighed, looking at me with fake sadness. It's been hard to watch. She forgets things. She calls me by Dad's name. And the night Dad died, she was aggressive. She demanded he sign papers. Dad was weak. He just wanted peace. I think she scared him. Objection. Henderson said softly. Speculation. Sustained, the judge said. Stick to the facts, Mr. Anderson. The fact is, Brendan said, his voice hardening, she emptied the accounts. She stole $25 million while my father was dying. That's not the act of a sane, loving wife. That's the act of someone who is unstable and greedy. She's destroying what my father built. I looked down at my hands, letting my shoulders shake. I heard snickers from the gallery. Jessica's friends were there. I dug my nails into my palms to keep from screaming. Liar, I thought. You filthy liar. Peterson then called Jessica to the stand. She was even worse. She cried. Actual tears. Deborah has always been difficult, Jessica sobbed, dabbing her eyes. But lately? She's been scary. She threatened to burn the house down if we didn't give her cash. We just want to make sure she's safe. In a facility where she can get help. We're doing this for her own good." The judge looked concerned. She looked at me with pity. "Mrs. Anderson, these are serious allegations." Peterson rested his case. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. The transfers speak for themselves. We ask for immediate conservatorship." The judge turned to Henderson. "Counselor, your witness." Henderson stood up. He didn't look defeated anymore. He looked like a wolf who had just seen a rabbit enter the trap. He adjusted his tie. "Actually, Your Honor," Henderson said, his voice booming. "We have a few witnesses of our own. And some new evidence that has come to light in the last 48 hours. Brandon frowned. Jessica stopped crying instantly. "Call your witness," the judge said. "I call Ms. Brenda Miller to the stand." Jessica gasped. It was loud enough to echo in the room. She grabbed Brandon's arm. Brandon looked at the back of the room, confused. The doors opened. 2 police officers escorted Brenda in. She looked terrified, her face pale, but she walked straight to the stand. "Who is this?" Peterson demanded. "This witness was not on the list." "She is a rebuttal witness regarding the natural causes of death," Henderson said. "And her testimony is critical to the mental state of my client, specifically, that she is the only sane person in this room." The judge nodded, intrigued. "Allow it." Brenda took the oath. "Ms. Miller," Henderson asked. "What is your relationship to the plaintiff, Jessica Anderson?" She is my cousin," Brenda whispered. "And what is your occupation?" "I am a nurse at County General. I was on duty the night Richard Anderson died." "Ms. Miller," Henderson walked closer. "Did Jessica Anderson contact you prior to Richard Anderson's death?" "Yes." "What did she ask you to do?" The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Brenda looked at Jessica. Jessica's eyes were wide, pleading, then threatening. Brenda took a deep breath. "She asked me to ensure that no toxicology report was run. She told me to list the cause of death as cardiac arrest. And she paid me $40,000 to do it." "Liar!" Jessica screamed, standing up. "She's a lying junkie." "Sit down, Mrs. Anderson," the judge banged her gavel. "I have the bank records here, Your Honor," Henderson said, handing a stack of papers to the bailiff. "Wire transfers from a shell company registered to Jessica Anderson. And I have text messages." Brandon's face went white. He looked like he was going to vomit. "But that's not all," Henderson continued, turning to the judge. "We also have video surveillance from the Anderson estate. Recorded 2 nights ago. While the plaintiff claimed to be grieving, he was actually breaking and entering." Henderson plugged his laptop into the court projector. The video played. The black and white footage of Brandon and Jessica breaking into the study. The audio was crystal clear. "He was a barrier, Brandon. We did what we had to do, self-defense." The courtroom erupted. "Order! Order in the court!" The judge was hammering the gavel so hard I thought the handle would snap. Brandon was frozen. He stared at the screen where his own voice was confessing to murder. Jessica was clawing at her purse, looking for her phone, looking for an exit, looking for a miracle that wasn't coming. "Your Honor," Henderson said, his voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "This is not a conservatorship hearing anymore. This is a murder investigation." "Mr. Peterson," the judge said, her voice shaking with rage. She pointed a finger at Brandon's lawyer. "Control your clients." Peterson looked at the screen, then at Brandon, then at the pile of evidence Henderson had dumped. He started packing his briefcase. I cannot represent them in light of this evidence. I am withdrawing as counsel effective immediately. You can't leave. Brandon screamed, grabbing Peterson's sleeve. Fix this. It's fake. It's AI. My mother made it with AI. She's crazy, remember? Sit down, Mr. Anderson, the judge roared. Bailiff, secure the doors. No one leaves this room. I stood up then. I shed the oversized coat. I straightened my back. I wasn't the small, confused widow anymore. I walked to the center of the room, standing between my lawyer and my son. I looked Brandon dead in the eye. It's not AI, Brandon, I said, my voice steady and loud. It's a wise cam. $30 on Amazon. Dad installed it because he knew you were stealing from the company. He knew you were a thief before he knew you were a killer. I wasn't stealing. Brandon yelled, sweat pouring down his face. I was investing. I was going to pay it back. Investing in what? I threw the file of embezzlement records onto his table. It scattered across the floor, hundreds of pages of fraudulent transfers. Offshore gambling? High-stakes poker? You lost $4 million, Brandon. And when your father cut you off, you decided to kill him rather than face the consequences. I didn't kill him. Brandon pointed at Jessica, his finger trembling. She did it. She made the tea. I just didn't stop her. You coward. Jessica shrieked, slapping him across the face right there in the courtroom. The sound echoed. You begged me to fix it. You said you couldn't go to jail. You said you'd do anything. The gallery was in shock. The judge was signaling to the officers. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, I have one more piece of evidence. The toxicology report confirmed lethal levels of digitalis. Foxglove. The same plant Jessica grows in her greenhouse. I handed the report to the bailiff. The judge read it. Her face went pale. She looked at Brandon and Jessica with pure, unadulterated disgust. This court finds probable cause to deny the petition for conservatorship with prejudice, the judge said. Furthermore, I am remanding both plaintiffs into the custody of the Sheriff's Department pending criminal charges. Bailiff, take them into custody. No! Jessica screamed. You can't do this. I'm pregnant. You're not pregnant, Brandon spat, holding his cheek. You're just a liar. You've been lying since the day I met you. It was a circus. A horrible, tragic circus. But it was the truth. If you are watching this, and you are feeling the heat of this moment, the absolute satisfaction of seeing the masks fall off, please type justice in the comments. Let me know you are with me. Because this next part, this is the part where the handcuffs come out. The doors at the back of the courtroom burst open again. This time, it wasn't a nurse. It was the lead detective from the Major Crimes Unit, Detective Miller. He was followed by 4 uniformed officers. They marched down the aisle. The sound of their heavy boots on the wood floor was the only sound in the room. Even Jessica had stopped screaming. They stopped at the plaintiff's table. Brandon Anderson, the detective said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. You are under arrest for the murder of Richard Anderson, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder. Jessica Anderson, he turned to her. You are under arrest for murder, tampering with evidence, and fraud. Please, Brandon sobbed, his knees buckling. He looked at me. Mom! Mom, tell them. I'm your son. You can't let them take me. I'm sorry. I'll pay it back. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with the same terrified look he had when he was 5 years old and broke a vase. Mom, fix it. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had called me insane. The man who had poisoned the love of my life. I don't have a son, I said quietly, my voice carrying through the silent room. My son died when he decided to kill his father. Mom, he wailed as the officer yanked his hands behind his back. Click. The sound of the handcuffs was the loudest thing I have ever heard. It was the sound of a door closing forever. Jessica fought. She kicked one of the officers in the shin. Get off me! Do you know who I am? I will sue you. My lawyer will destroy you. You don't have a lawyer, ma'am, the officer said, forcing her down onto the table to cuff her. He just quit. And you have the right to remain silent, though I doubt you have the ability. They dragged them out. Brendan was weeping, his legs dragging on the floor like a dead weight. Jessica was screaming obscenities, cursing me, cursing Richard, cursing the world. As they passed me, Brendan stopped struggling for a second. He looked me right in the eye. I'm sorry, he whispered. No, you're not, I said. You're just caught. The doors closed behind them. The courtroom was silent. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Anderson, she said softly. I am so sorry for your loss. The asset freeze is lifted immediately. You have full control of the estate. And may I say, your husband would be proud. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. I turned to Henderson. He looked exhausted. He wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. It's over, he said. No, I said, gathering my papers. The legal battle is over. The cleanup has just begun. I have a company to save. You think family loyalty runs deep? Put two narcissists in separate interrogation rooms and threaten them with the death penalty. Watch how fast the blood turns to water. Watch how fast love turns to hate. Detective Miller showed me the transcripts a week later. I didn't need to see them, but I wanted to. I needed to know the mechanics of the betrayal. I needed to know why. In room A, Brendan folded in 10 minutes. He didn't even ask for a lawyer. He just wanted to talk. Detective, whose idea was the poison, Brendan? Brendan, Jessica's. It was all Jessica. She learned about plants in college. She said it was undetectable. I told her no. I told her we should just talk to Dad again. But she said Dad was going to call the FBI about the money. She said we'd both go to prison for 20 years. She said if I loved her, I'd let her handle it. Detective, and you watched him drink it? Brendan, I wasn't in the room. I stayed in the car. I couldn't watch. But I knew. When she came out, she held up the empty mug and smiled. She said, problem solved. God, I'm so stupid. I just wanted to pay off the debts. In room B, Jessica was a different story. She was cold. Calculating. She sat with her arms crossed, staring at the wall. Detective, your husband says it was your idea. Jessica, Brendan is a spineless worm. He's lying. He came to me crying because his daddy cut off his allowance. He said he wished the old man was dead. He bought the seeds online using my card because his cards were maxed out. He brewed the tea. I tried to stop him. I told him it was crazy. But he was manic. He threatened me. He said if I told anyone, he'd kill me too. Detective, we have texts from your burner phone to the nurse, Jessica. Jessica, Brendan made me send them. I was a battered wife. I was terrified of him. They ripped each other apart. They exposed every secret. The embezzlement scheme? Brendan's idea. The cover-up? Jessica's idea. The laundering of the money through the Cayman Islands? A joint venture. They handed the police a roadmap to their own destruction. It turned out, the debts were massive. Brendan had lost over $6 million gambling on crypto futures and underground poker. He had borrowed from loan sharks, the kind who break legs. They had threatened to kill Jessica if he didn't pay up by the end of the month. So, they decided to kill Richard instead. To pay a debt to criminals, they became criminals. Reading the transcripts, I felt a strange sense of detachment. It was like reading a script for a bad movie. These people, they weren't my family. They were strangers who had worn the faces of people I loved. They'll both go away for life, Detective Miller told me. With the confession, the nurse's testimony, and the physical evidence, it's a slam dunk. No parole. Good, I said. Do you want to see them? Before they are transferred to the county jail? I thought about it. Did I want to see Brendan one last time? Did I want to ask him if he ever loved us, or if we were just banks to him? No, I said. I have nothing left to say to them. They made their choice. The sentencing hearing happened 6 months later. I didn't go. I couldn't bear to see my son in an orange jumpsuit. I couldn't bear to see the shackles. I couldn't bear to hear the judge read out the details of how they planned Richard's death over dinner. Mr. Henderson went in my place. He called me afterward. Life without parole for both, he said. The judge called it one of the most callous acts of patricide he had ever seen. He recommended no possibility of early release. Did they say anything? Jessica cursed at the judge. She screamed that she was a victim. Brendan just cried. He asked if you were there. He looked for you in the gallery. What did you tell him? I told him you were busy running the company. I told him you were building the legacy he tried to destroy. And I was. In the 6 months since the arrest, I had cleaned house. I fired every single person Brendan had hired. I brought back the old guard. I audited every penny. I recovered about $4 million of the stolen funds from the shell accounts. I set up a scholarship fund in Richard's name for students studying logistics. I sold Brendan's house. I sold his Porsche. I sold Jessica's jewelry. I donated every single cent of it to a charity for elder abuse victims. I wanted to scrub their stain from the earth. But there was one thing left to do. I went to the prison once. Just once. Not to visit Brendan. To visit Jessica. She sat behind the glass, looking pale and stripped of her glamour. Her roots were showing. She looked common. She looked like the desperate girl she had been before she clawed her way into our lives. She picked up the phone. Come to gloat? She sneered. No, I said. I came to tell you something. What? That you won? Congratulations. You're the queen of the ashes. No. I came to tell you that I found your stash. Jessica's eyes widened. What stash? The crypto wallet you hid on the encrypted drive. The one Brendan didn't know about. The one with the $2 million you skimmed off the top of his embezzlement. You were stealing from the thief, Jessica. She went white. You found it? Yes. My IT team found it. And I handed it over to the feds this morning. It added another 10 years to your sentence for federal tax evasion. And since it's a federal crime, you'll be moved to a higher security facility. Further away from here. I smiled. You thought you were smarter than everyone, Jessica. But you forgot one thing. I was balancing books before you were born. I know where the pennies go. She slammed the phone against the glass. I hate you. I hope you die alone. I won't die alone, I said calmly. I have memories. I have respect. You have nothing. I hung up the phone. I walked away while she screamed silently behind the glass. The house is quiet now. But it's a good quiet. I redecorated. I got rid of the heavy curtains Jessica had picked out. I painted the dining room a soft blue. I opened the windows to let the breeze in. I still miss Richard every day. Sometimes, I hear his laugh in the hallway. Sometimes, I smell his cedar cologne on his old coats. But I don't feel unsafe anymore. I run the company now. Me. The housewife. It turns out, I'm actually quite good at it. Our profits are up 15% this quarter. The employees respect me. They call me the Iron Lady behind my back. I take it as a compliment. I have reconnected with old friends. I travel. I joined a bridge club. I started gardening again, but this time, I grow vegetables. Life. Not poison. I am not just a widow. I am a survivor. And the money? The $25 million? It's safe. Just like Richard asked. I put it into a trust. Not for Brandon. Never for Brandon. I changed my will the day after the sentencing. I put it into a trust for the families of the employees Richard loved. For their healthcare, their children's education. Richard's legacy wasn't his bloodline. It was his kindness. And I am making sure that kindness lives on. I also hired Brenda. Not as a nurse, she lost her license. But I paid for her rehab. I helped her get a job in administration at a different hospital. She testified. She helped me. And unlike my son, she showed remorse. Mercy is a luxury I can afford now. Tonight is Friday. It's been exactly 1 year since that dinner. Since the music played and Richard held my hand and asked me to save us. I set the table for two. I cooked the same meal. Roast chicken. Raspberry tart. I poured 2 glasses of wine. I sat at my spot. Across from me, Richard's chair was empty. But the light hitting the mahogany made it glow warm, almost like he was sitting there. I picked up my glass. To us, I whispered to the empty room. To the team. I took a sip. I looked at the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Tick. Tock. Tick. Tock. Time moves on. Pain fades, but the scar remains. It reminds you that you survived. It reminds you that you are stronger than you think. I thought about Brandon sitting in his cell tonight. I wondered if he remembers this dinner. I wondered if he regrets the choice he made. Does he miss his father? Or does he just miss the money? But then, I stopped wondering. Because he chose his path. And I chose mine. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the lake. The moon was full, reflecting off the water. I kept it safe, Richard, I said aloud. I saved the company. I saved myself. And I stopped them. I felt a sudden warmth, a breeze that shouldn't be there in a closed room. It brushed my cheek. I smiled. I know, Deb, I heard in my heart. I know. I turned off the lights, leaving only the candles burning. My name is Deborah Anderson. I am 59 years old. I have lost my husband and my son. But I have found myself. And let me tell you something, ladies. Never let anyone tell you that you are just anything. Just a wife. Just a mother. Just a woman. You are the CEO of your own life. And if someone tries to take it from you, burn them down. If this story moved you, if you felt Deborah's pain and her victory, please share this video with a strong woman in your life. We all need to know that we have the strength to fight back. And don't forget to subscribe. I have so many more stories to tell. Until next time, stay safe and trust your gut. And so, Deborah's journey reminds us of an unshakable truth: resilience is often born from the deepest pain. Life can shatter us in unimaginable ways, yet it is in those broken pieces that we find the strength to rebuild, to redefine who we are, and to rise above betrayal and loss. Deborah's story is not just about justice, it's about rediscovering self-worth and proving that even in the face of unimaginable adversity, we hold the power to take back control of our lives. This tale also serves as a poignant reminder that trust is precious and must be earned, not blindly given. It teaches us to value integrity, to guard our hearts, and to never underestimate our own ability to fight back when life corners us. Deborah's courage and determination are a testament to the power of choosing dignity over despair and purpose over revenge. What did this story teach you about strength and perseverance? Share your thoughts below, or simply comment good if you found this reflection meaningful. Let's continue to inspire one another.